Okay, let me now introduce and bring on board a very special guest, Venkat Ramaswamy, Executive Director with Edelweiss Financial Services. Venkat, it's your first time on ET now. It's your first time on the show, so a very warm welcome. Glad you could, join us today. Venkat, before we talk about your conference, I'm tempted to ask you a question on markets. How would you characterize the current market environment? September, we've seen a great rally. October, it's all about consolidation. Do you think the best part of the rally is behind us, or we still have some more headroom left?
See, reality is if the government persists with the direction that they have taken in the second half of September and early October, I do believe that the markets will remain in good shape. Now they are currently, because they ran up, they are in a consolidation phase, but currently, unless something significantly changes at the government level and I don't see too much on the economy level that is changing, I expect the markets to be in reasonably good shape.
Venkat, now over to your conference. Tell us what is the theme this time around and what sort of participation you are expecting at the conference, given the kind of economic standpoint we are at. You've got the policy ahead, inflation is still pretty high, and then the push coming in from the government by way of reforms, implementation still a question mark.
So this conference is about unlisted companies, slightly different from all the companies that you have been speaking about earlier in the year. This is about unlisted companies and predominantly private equity investors. This is the second such conference, and we do this on an yearly basis. We call it the Convergence, where this time we have close to 60 to 65 companies in coming here for this two-day conference, where they do one-on-one meetings with private equity investors as well as some key public market investors. This is our way of sort of giving back to this industry. This is the industry that we started off with, and we bring here to the conference some very exciting companies in various sectors. We have companies in the healthcare sector, we have companies in consumer and on the internet side, and even infrastructure. So we do believe that this is part of enterprise and entrepreneurship within the country. There are still so many new companies which are born, and which I think will help India over the long term.
Of course, ET now is partnered with Edelweiss to exclusively cover that conference, and you can see that conference in the evening live on ET now. Venkat, could I ask you about earnings? What do you make of the initial earnings which have come out so far? Excepting HCL Technologies, none of the companies so far, or none of the Nifty 50 companies so far have surprised us. Do you think Q2 will mark as a bottom for earnings downgrade, or it's too early to assume that?
I suspect, or my belief is that yes, you are right. This is sort of the bottom, and I don't see too much degrowth from here in earnings in most of these companies. There are also, outside of the Nifty 50, there are enough companies which are starting to show momentum and growth, and sectors which are showing momentum and growth, and which keeps me at least enthused about where the markets are going or the economy is going.
Venkat, give us more details in terms of where is it that you are seeing private capital interest actually generate. Are there any particular sector wherein investors are extremely curious about putting money in, or are extremely enthused?
Well, I think India consumption continues to be a strong area for private capital to go in. So all India consumption-led stories or plays are very interesting for the market. This whole digitization has led to a lot of interest in the media area. we are also starting to see, and it's a sector that not too many people speak about, we are starting to see chemicals, the area of chemicals making a strong comeback, in the sense that if you look at their first quarter numbers, and potentially we will see that in the second quarter numbers also, is that they have turned, and the rupee being where it is have only helped all these companies, because these companies have really become efficient over the last 5, 7, 10 years, and their input costs don't change at all, while they are able to, their sale price is improving, and which is basically leading to better margins. If you track some of these companies, and I don't want to name any, you will see what I'm saying.
But Venkat, do you think Indian markets have a serious base in place? It could be 5,000 on the Nifty, it could be something like 17,500 on the Sensex, and something really dire has to happen locally or globally for Nifty to break below 5,000 or Sensex to break below 17,500?
Well, I want to agree with you. But over the last 3, 4, 5 years, somehow either India or some part of the world ends up doing something in the category of dire, which affects all of us. So, but from what we see and what is on the table, I would agree with you that this looks like there's not too much downside from here.
So Venkat, at the conference, if an investor walks up to you and he gives you a check that, look, this is my $100 million. I always wanted to invest in India, but I've missed this year's rally. Venkat Ramaswamy, please help me out to invest in India and make me money. How would you address this query?
Well,
you know the answer.
To start with, in the sense that well, don't invest in, I won't be in a hurry to invest in listed companies immediately, because I think there is still a lot of news flows which is going, which is coming about, and but if you are a long-term investor, and I think there are, if you pick sectors, that is potentially a much better way of investing in India. Financial services is definitely a sector that we like, and we see a lot of appetite for paper in that sector. If you look at the market cap of that sector, that is still much lower than what it is in most developed economies, and so that is definitely and if your faith and on India in the long term is stable, I think that is definitely a sector, and a portfolio can constitute of leaders or the top 3 companies in every part of financial services, and you have a portfolio.
Now, financial services, Venkat, is a very broad term. Edelweiss is a financial firm, but you've got about 7 or 8 businesses. So which end of the financial business or the financial service gambit you like? Because one side you've got PSU banks, in the middle you've got service providers like Edelweiss, one end you've got brokerages, and the top end you've got private banks.
So I genuinely mean all parts of financial services, and I actually also include, and this is from a little bit of our experience. We took earlier this year, we took the first exchange public, MCX, and from the appetite for that IPO, one would have thought that the public markets sentiment has changed, but there have not been huge levels of IPOs after that. It was specific to that company. So what I'm saying is, I think in all areas of financial services, there is currently opportunity. There is this whole NBFC area, which is very, very interesting, and companies are getting started or going into specific areas within lending, and NBFC can't be put as one category. There are gold loan companies, there are housing finance companies, there are equipment finance companies, there are truck finance companies, there are new truck finance companies, there are old truck finance companies. So, and some of these companies are very, very interesting and are growing at a reasonably good pace. Then there are the banks, both public sector and private sector. There are some really interesting banks in the PSU sector, in the Senate. I think everybody speaks about the private banks, but there are really some interesting banks doing interesting things among the PSU banks. And all the service providers. Right? So I'm currently bullish about financial services across, not necessarily one specific vertical. I'm currently also enthused about where insurance will go. There are no listed companies in that area, but that is also a sector which will bring about a lot of large listed companies potentially over the next few years.